Hello friends, Magnet back here for another part of our walkthrough of Oxygen Not Included's base game. Let's check out a couple things that have changed and then we'll get on to capturing a volcano in this video. One of which that I think we should probably be doing by now is replacing our pipes that are in these cooling tanks with radiant pipes, just so that we can get the temperature exchange down to a better degree, because as you charge up, or rather start using your petroleum generators, it's going to get really hot in this room. So this room's already warming up just a little bit, and if I can get this to cool down a little bit more, I'd rather replace that. So just going to use lead, because lead is very available. And like I had talked about in the previous video, just might want to make a couple of stripes here and there. You don't need to do the whole thing with radiant pipes, but a few of them like that ought to do it and keep this nice and cool. So you could do that. If your food's having any problems... Whoa, what happened to my power? Oh. Some sand fell on it. If you're having any problems with cooling around your food, you can do that too, but the food is typically not going to be that big of a problem. My food is nice and cold, so I'm not super worried about that. It's also being cooled down by all the stuff that I'm shipping up from the bottom of the map too, so that'll happen also. But still should be fine. Body temperatures are still within range. Just need to get all the power turned back on here and dig out my transformer. So yeah, the other thing we should mention is we just talked about making plastic, so you should have a good amount of it now. Let's talk about where to use it. You're going to want to use it in a few places, one of which is going to be wherever you need to vent any gases, but that you want it to be a higher pressure. Like, you want to make sure it always vents. So instead of sending everything that I have out into this tank and then eventually into... or rather out of a vent, I'm just going to go straight into a high pressure gas vent, so that no matter what's in here, it will get vented out, as long as I keep my base pressure something pretty normal. You don't want to do this for everything. You don't want to over pressurize your base with oxygen, because your duplicants' eardrums will get ruptured, and they really don't like that. So yeah, definitely don't want to do that. But for cases like this, you'll want to do it. We'll probably also want to do it for our natural gas. So if we get in here, let me build a... way to get in here really quickly. Actually, there's not that much gas. You could put on a suit here, but the gas is not that much. It's also not very hot, so our duplicate should be able to go in here and replace this. There's a handful of other places you could do this at, but you can kind of just do it at your own discretion. We're going to use one here in just a bit, and we'll also use another thing that's going to require plastic, but a couple other things that I wanted to talk about is I did remove all my meal wood, so I'm entirely on berry sludge. I still do have some pickled meals sitting around, which are just like backup food, but I should be able to sustain now on berry sludge and barbecue. So I'm going to wind up condensing all this stuff down to a little bit of a smaller place so I can use this area for something else. Maybe when we get better bedrooms with our new plastic, we can make better beds for them, so we might do that here. So yeah, that's going to be coming up. Another thing too is you want to make sure that your metal refinery is spinning constantly, and one of the things we want to do soon is start refining our wolframite. So I'm just going to put in a job here for wolframite that's like, I don't know, 99, sure. Wish I could go a little bit higher than that, because I don't want it to go forever. I still do need to use some, but I do want this to continue running as much as I can. And if you run out of your coolant, then you want to just find another place to refill it from. The other last thing is we are still relying on ice for cooling, and especially here it's going to be hard to keep up. So the ice that I had naturally mined out has started to dwindle quite a bit. So this is why I kept this area down here filled up with these bins of ice. So if I needed more, my duplicates can come down here and grab it. They might have cleaned all the ones out of here, so I could just open up this one too to give them access to it. I can also continue to mine out the ice from the biomes that I don't really care about that much, but we're about to switch off the ice. It's not meant to be a long-term solution, but we've barely even touched any of our ice biomes to get that out of here, and we've still gotten all the cooling that we need. So we'll switch on to something else here, probably in the next video or so. Alright, let's start capturing this volcano. You want to capture, and specifically I want to capture some kind of refined metal volcano. This is a copper volcano. It's one of the better ones in the game. If you can find iron or copper, those are probably two of the better ones. Gold is also pretty good, so any one of those will be totally doable. A wolframite, or rather a tungsten volcano would be great. I don't recall if they spawn in the base game or not. I haven't seen one for a little while. I know they spawn in Spaced Out, but I'm not 100% sure about the base game. Anyway, let's grab this. So, like we typically do, we will want to mine out a pretty large area, like this. We could probably align this a little bit better. We might as well just do it like this. Whoops. Cancel all this. And we'll get our duplicants down here to start mining all this stuff out. And then I'll talk about the safest way to approach this. Like, you don't want to just unearth the volcano all out of nowhere. We're going to want to go in here slowly and not, like, only unearth maybe one tile at a time, starting at the bottom, so we can see whether the volcano is currently active or not. If it is active, then you want to unveil it basically very last. So I don't want to just rush in there and do it now. I do want to cover everything around this with igneous rock, or if you have ceramic, this is another good place to do it, because this volcano and the stuff that's in here, which is mostly going to be steam, is going to get quite hot, so you don't want that to be exchanging temperatures with other stuff around you, if you can help it. So, duplicants are going to get in here and start doing this. While they're busy with that, let's take a look around at any other places that we could replace vents on this. Or we could start doing our bedrooms now too, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. Could also just edit this stuff down just to get it all into one video here. Let's see how quickly they can get all this stuff done. By the way, if you do have a way to continue to get all of your water to funnel down to certain places, it's really going to be helpful as time goes on. I know I've mentioned this a few times, but it's just keeps coming in over and over. This one's dormant, by the way, so this one we should be able to dig up. Just for safety's sake, I'm going to wait until last, just because I don't know when it's actually going to become not dormant, and I don't want to just jump in and do something haphazardly when it's not ready. So if this is dormant, it might take us a little while. I also have another copper volcano here that we could capture instead, but I'm just going to worry about this one for right now. And there's no harm in taking extra volcanoes. The whole point of the metal volcanoes specifically is to get free refined metals. Plus, you're going to generate a little bit of power off of them also, so there's no reason not to grab this. And I like to do this now both for the power and just so I don't need to keep spending my metal ores on refined metal if I don't have to. These duplicants are taking just a little bit. Let me fast forward until most of this is dug out and unearthed, and I will start setting up the structure for how this is going to look. So I'll edit another part on in just a sec. Okay, I got it all dug out. Let's start shaping up how this is going to look. So like I mentioned with ceramic, I did cancel this and destroy what was there and restart this, just to make sure to get the material out of the way. There will be a bunch of material we'll have to manually sweep from here too, but we'll get there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to encase this one, or this section with the volcano inside it, in some ceramic tile as much as possible. Maybe to about here. You want to leave a little bit of space on the end, which we'll talk about in just a sec. Then the rest of this doesn't necessarily need to all be ceramic. The ceramic is really important just to keep the temperature in here as isolated as possible, because that's going to represent how much energy we can get off of it. And we don't want to waste anything, like any heat in there. That heat in there is very valuable for energy as well. So I'm just going to start putting igneous rock around the rest of it. Then we'll leave a little bit of a space like this. This area is going to be for water, so that we can actually cool we can cool the steam turbine that is going to be handling a lot of the heat from this. So I'm just going to build it kind of like this, and the reason that I left that space is I'm going to use some metal tiles to kind of run up the side here. I will eventually close all this stuff off, but just to show you what the idea is here. I'm also going to leave metal tiles in between where this water is going to be, so that it can just automatically cool my steam turbine and I don't need to do anything else. So let me start closing off some of this. What we're going to need at the bottom is a handful of things. The first thing we have not built before, but this is when you're going to want to get your steel going and have plenty by this phase of the game. You want a thermo aqua tuner that we're going to put down here, and this is going to be responsible for keeping this whole setup cooled enough so that we can generate power from it, and also not overheat everything, because your steam turbine is going to produce a ton of heat. Speaking of the steam turbine, let's go ahead and add that really fast. I'm just going to put it right here, make it out of like copper. This one doesn't matter too much if you make it out of lead, but actually we might as well just make it out of lead then. The reason you wouldn't use lead, I know I've talked about this a few times, the lead's melting temperature is quite low, so if there's inside here is going to be way hotter at one point, so you do risk melting like the wires or something like that. So you don't want to put something in here that has the chance of melting, so I'm not going to use any lead inside here. or if I'm using any machinery made of lead, that has a much lower overheat temperature, but the steam turbine overheat temperature is already so high, and it'll already shut down at a temperature that is consistent regardless of the material you make it out of. So I'm just going to set up something like this. I also need a couple of other things. For one, I need a gas pump. I'm going to make it out of steel. This gas pump is just going to be to vacuum this area out, because this area is eventually going to be filled with water. That water is going to be turned into steam, and that steam is going to be harvested for energy. Also, that's going to cool down the contents of this, which we'll cover in just a second. So on this is another great reason to use a high-pressure gas vent, because I don't want to be blocked by having to vent this out if there's too much pressure out here. I also like to put a high-pressure gas vent in here, just because it helps exchange the temperature a little bit more if I put in some more oxygen, or if you have hydrogen available, that's also a good use for this, just to help share temperature more and keep your steam turbine cooled down. This is going to be our pool of water. I'll get it all sealed up here in a second. But we're going to need a couple of things. One, we need the initial vent that's going to be for your steam turbine. So I'm going to connect the steam turbine down to this vent so that it drops straight on my aqua tuner. It can really go anywhere. It doesn't really matter that much. It might actually be better. Now that I'm rethinking this, let me actually drop it over here. Worried about it melting, but I don't think it will. I think we'll be okay. Let me use something. Here's another test you can do, by the way. If you ever want to know the melting temperature of a bunch of things, I could just build them all out of different materials, and then when I click on the thing that's built, I can go to the properties and see what its melting temperature is. So this is telling me that wolframite is the best thing to resist heat, so if I want to create a vent here that won't have to worry too much about it melting, I could put that in there. So I'm just going to make it out of wolframite, and then I can just cancel all the other ones if I don't need them. And this vent we can go ahead and get rid of. Now we need a couple of other things. We need to actually seed this with some water, and we need water in here too. So I'm going to create a couple more vents. They don't need to be made out of wolframite, obviously, because they're not going to be subjected to that level of heat. Throw one here, and let me see. You want to definitely use clean water for this. Clean water for this especially because if you boil polluted water or salt water, it will create a byproduct, and that can potentially mess up your setup down here. I just want it to be clean water so I don't have to deal with that. I'll also use clean water here because it's starting to be very plentiful, and you could use salt water or something like that, but clean water still is even a little bit better than salt water in a lot of cases, so I'm fine with using just clean water here. Plus, I don't really have a lot of salt water available. I guess if I was being a little bit less lazy, I could like collect a bunch of this salt water and this salt water to be put together, but the clean water is so available, and I have so many on backup down here that we should be totally fine to fill this up. However, the thing that we're going to put inside the tank that's inside here, which we'll talk about in a second, is going to be polluted water. I'll show you the difference. So first, I need to run a line of clean water down here. So we need to grab it from here. You are going to start getting kind of a spaghetti of wires and pipes and stuff by this phase of the game, so that's what mine looks like. Want to run our clean water all the way down to where our volcano is. I'm going to send, first of all, I'm going to have it go to the bottom area to fill this up before I have it go anywhere else. So I'm just going to set it up like this, so that the first place it'll go is through this. If this is turned off, it'll go into the vent and fall into this chamber. I don't want to start filling this up quite yet, so I will want this to be on. So we go ahead and set this up like that. We need power for that too. There we go. This is just a liquid shutoff, by the way. Pretty standard stuff. Just allows you to shut the line on and off for your water. Just set up something like that. Then inside here, we do need something that is going to be a loop for keeping this water cool. This water is going to be where we send our copper through to cool it down, because I obviously don't want 3,000 degree or 2,000 degree copper to be coming into my base. I want it down as low as possible by the time it gets out of here. So if it's down around like, 15C or something like that, that's way more doable than several hundred or something like that. So this tank of water is just going to be to cool that off. Lastly, we're going to be able to, or sorry, let's get one more thing here. We're going to need another liquid shutoff for this, which is going to be controlling when we're actually going to be sending water in there. And I'm going to build as much of this out of radiant pipe as I can. So it's going to come out here, connect to a liquid shutoff, kind of like that. I'm also going to use a liquid pipe thermosensor because I only want to send water to my aqua tuner if it is too warm. That aqua tuner will cool it down, but it will produce a tremendous amount of heat, which is going to get sunk into the water and steam nets here, which will then be turned into energy by the steam turbine. So kind of a long roundabout way to do this, but the aqua tuner and steam turbine combination is one of the best combinations in the game, but it does require a lot of power, which is why we did that earlier. Let's see. This is not... I probably would flip this around normally, but I don't want to go back and do all that. There we go. Then the rest of this radiant pipe, I want this radiant pipe to kind of run all over the place. It will eventually run up here. I kind of actually want to redo this. One second. Kind of have this snake back and forth like that. Then I'll have it connect up here. And it's not going to be super clean, but I just want it to cover as much space as possible before it goes back into the tank. Maybe something like this. Sure, why not? I just want this water to be cold, and I want it to stay cold for as long as possible. I need to get my duplicants on this. Like I mentioned, if this is not dormant, then you will want to be careful about unearthing this. You'll want to do it very last. I'm going to be a little bit cavalier because I want to get this opened up and get this running as soon as possible. So yeah, this setup, let me set this up. If this is going to be, I don't want to freeze all my water in here, and I don't want to freeze what could be sent through the pipes. What I'm going to send through the pipes is going to be polluted water, so I need to check where it freezes. -20. This is going to lower the temperature of the water by 14 degrees. So theoretically, I could keep this at a super low temperature, like if it's ever above -6 Celsius. But the problem is that -6 will start to freeze all my other water. And I don't want to do that, so I'll just set it to like 5. So if the water inside here is ever above 5 degrees Celsius, it'll come into here and get cooled down. I should drop it to, what, like -9 or something like that, and then back into the tank and cool off all the rest of this water. So this will be nice and cold. If it does get too cold and there's no reason to keep it that cold, I can always bring this back up. So that'll be the plan. I also do need to get some polluted water into that. I might as well just take it from another source. So we'll just grab it from this big pool of water that's down here. We'll start filling this up. And in the meantime, I don't really want this to start running until I'm ready for it. So I'm just going to set this to some ridiculous number. If it's ever above that number, then I'll have it go. I just don't want it to run while I'm filling up the tank. I just want the tank to be filled up for the time being. Okay, we're getting close. Last part of this that we're going to need to build as far as new machinery is some auto sweepers, or just one. I really want this auto sweeper to be able to reach all parts of the volcano and stuff where this would be putting out copper. So something like this, but I don't want to build it like right on top of it like that, because that's going to be a problem. This will potentially overheat this and damage it, and if anything overheats and breaks inside here, it's really a pain to get back in there and fix it. So there we go, we're starting to send in water. I'll have my duplicants dig out the rest of this volcano, just so that we can see what's in there. I normally wouldn't do this until that's like the last thing that I do. But this first couple eruptions from a metal volcano shouldn't be that bad. Alright, and then I will want a conveyor loader next to this somewhere. And then the rails that are going to come along here, I'm probably going to want to build these out of wolframite just so they don't melt. It's pretty unlikely to melt in a metal volcano, but other ones are a little bit hotter that might cause a problem. And I'm just going to snake this through, kind of like this. It doesn't have to be nice and neat or anything like that. I'm just trying to use as many tiles as I can. And then once we get to the end, we're going to want to do one thing. I want to put this on a conveyor shutoff. I'm going to also build this out of steel, just so it has a high overheat temperature. And this conveyor shutoff is going to be controlled by a thermosensor on the rail as well, because I want the copper to cool down as much as it's going to cool down before we actually send it out of here. I want as much heat to be sunk into the steam and turned into energy as possible. There's a lot of stuff happening here, so let me take a short little break here, and I will hook up the rest of this once the rest of this is all built. We'll get this all vacuumed out and get it ready for production, so I'll be back in just a second. Okay, duplicants have made some progress, so there's not as much stuff that's waiting to be done here. A few more things we need to fix up here, though, is we want a large power transformer because the Aqua Tuner takes a tremendous amount of power, but I don't want to sacrifice any of the separation of heat between these walls by having to run heavy watt wire in here. So I want this to all be totally covered up by ceramic as much as I can. So the large power transformer is going to be connected to this heavy watt wire, which the heavy watt wire needs to go into the steam turbine though, so I'm okay with that. Actually, to make this, well, I guess it doesn't really matter. I probably would rather do it here. Stick it in the top of here instead of bordering where all the cold water is going to be. I did put switches on this other vent too, so I can stop venting in both places if I need to. Yeah, so I want to hook up the power line to this, and I also want to make sure that I'm not going to use something that will melt in here. You usually won't have that much of a problem as long as you're far enough away from the volcano, so I can just use copper wiring in here as long as it is kind of far away. So I'll connect all this stuff up to copper, and then I'll run this up to here and connect it into the power transformer. Let me check to see if I can delete the other wires that are in the way. Yeah, okay, looks like we're good. We'll connect all these up. There. Okay, and then finally with our conveyor rail thermosensor, I only want to let the copper leave this room if it is below, say, like 150 Celsius. That's probably a good temperature to let my steam turbine use up all the heat, and if it's ever above that, or if this room is hotter than that, then I'm just going to let my steam turbine run as much as it wants to. I have this pattern of the conveyor rails because if you do this, this is going to let the copper exchange its temperature with the steam very rapidly in comparison to just sitting on the ground over here. So this is all very worth it in my eyes. Okay, let's see. We need to get this... I wanted to get this researched just so I know when this is going to go off. I know I talked about this earlier about not being that big of a deal. Oh, there's some polluted water in here that I need to get out of the way. Let's do this. I know I said I didn't want to be a big deal, but the volcanoes are so irregular, and this one going off at a time where I'm not expecting it is really not good. So I'd rather do that than take the risk here. Need to make sure to get this polluted water out of here. The rest of this will get shipped out by my system, so I'm not that worried. If you really want to get it out manually, you can just drop a couple of storage bins over to the side and just mark everything for sweep. Maybe I'll just do that so we have a nice clean slate to start from. The rest of this should all get done too. So just kind of waiting on our duplicates here for just a second. Almost done. Good job, Ruby. Ruby's very cold. There we go. This will be ready in the next 7 cycles. So probably by the next video, we will have an eruption going and we can kind of see what the process is for this. Okay. The only other thing that we need to make sure of is that we have a line out of here and that we have all of our stuff that's in here that needs to be done. So this is powered. This has a gas pipe coming out and it's powered. This has a line that's eventually going to go out, which I need to fix. Everything looks like it's good. The only thing that you want to look out for is don't overfill this with water. That can be really tempting to do, but you don't want to have a pressure in here that's more than 150 kilograms per tile. So I will usually try to get it so that this bottom, it's basically going to be like whatever the height of this is times 100. So I want this sitting at around 400 kilograms, and then I want to turn it off. If it gets any higher than that, and you have steam that's in here that's at a pressure that's higher than that, it will cause the... whoops, I'm going to turn this off. I don't want that to run yet. It'll cause the volcano to just not erupt, which is the worst case scenario. We also need to seed our system with polluted water here. Waiting on the power for that. Alright, this is getting pretty close to 400. Probably going to call it about here. So I'll just turn this off. And then I need to get the rest of my rails heading out of here. I don't necessarily need to use the rest of my wolframite on this. I can switch back over to something else. But you can see we're pretty strapped for metal. Whatever we need is totally fine. I'll just use this. And maybe some iron. I may need to go on some mining excavations to get all the rest of this stuff out. Because I don't think I'm going to have enough quite. There's going to be a lot more to mine. Maybe I won't worry too much about it. Then I'll just connect it up to something that I'm already shipping back. So there we go. This should be good. I will close this off with ceramic now once we get the insides of this built. So I'm just going to prioritize that. I'll set this to everything. I can ship everything out for the time being right now. I don't want to necessarily have my duplicates do that, but if so, you can always just do this and sweep everything if you want to. Whatever. Either way is totally fine. Let's get this polluted water out of here too. Note that I'm only doing polluted water that's marked for sweep. I don't want to send the polluted water that I have right now that's gassing off that I'm using for oxygen. I just want to get rid of this. So let's make sure this is nice and clean. Oh, whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. Meant to mark it for sweep and I marked it for empty. That was not smart. Alright, someone get in here and fix this. Hello, come on. There you go. Gotta cancel this so I don't keep mopping. There we go. Let's do everything that's marked for sweep here. Might as well. Alright, mark for sweep, not empty. Where's this polluted water? There we go. Sweep. Alright. Once we get that out of there, that'll be the last thing we really need to worry about. We are sitting right at around 400 kilograms per tile, so we're in pretty good shape in terms of pressure. I don't remember if we did this vacuuming out. Yeah, we did the vacuuming out of another room over here, which was this, which they still haven't replaced this high-pressure gas vent yet. I need to really prioritize that. So yeah, all we're going to do is once everything in here is done, there's really nothing left in here to do that I can see. Close this off with ceramic. Then we're going to vacuum this out and kind of make all of this empty. And we will just have a vacuum and then some water down here. And eventually the copper that comes out will boil it. And if it sits on the rail while it boils it, that's also fine. Let's see. It's also able to ship all this stuff out because it's below that amount. So that should be good. Yeah, I think we're all good. So I'm going to turn this on. I'll let it vacuum out. And that's pretty much the setup. And I'm also going to continue to fill up this water, by the way, and close all this stuff off now that it's ready. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll have this set up, hopefully up and running in the next 5.7 cycles so that we can see an eruption. And then we'll move on to some other cooling and some other things that we're going to do, probably down in the oil biome next. I think I'm going to start worrying about that. So we'll take care of that, and then we'll enjoy our free copper in the meantime and our free energy in the meantime when that does erupt. So I'll see you back here for another video really soon. Take care, and thanks for watching.